I'll let people settle for a moment, but in this session we're going to be talking about leveraging offline channels for D2C success, a big topic for a lot of D2C brands right now, especially as online marketing has gotten a lot more challenging and more expensive. So I'd like to bring to the stage Teju, the CEO and co-founder of Share Local Media, and Deniz, the Senior Growth Manager of Knix, or Senior Growth Manager of Offline Channels. Cool. All right, shall we sit here? Cool. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks so much for having us.
Great. So I'd love to start off with intros. Deniz, can you first start off by telling me a little bit more about what you do at Knix?
Sure. So I'll tell you a little bit about what Knix is. So Knix is a DTC brand in the intimates and apparel space. So we focus on innovative intimates like period underwear, like wireless bras that actually support. And really, we're on a mission to empower people on anything that they do and to live unapologetically free. So whether that's in a campaign that we do, an imagery that we do, it's everything is based on that mission. So we're really excited to talk a little bit more about how we do that with direct mail today.
Yeah. Teju, how about you?
Sure. So I'm the CEO at Share Local Media, and we essentially focus on helping technology and e-commerce companies with direct mail. And our mission is to modernize direct mail. We went into the space because we knew direct mail could be a unique channel. It could be really effective from a performance marketing point of view. But historically, it has a reputation for having long lead times, high minimums, oftentimes can have pretty difficult workflows from a client standpoint. And we want to make all of that easier, faster to test into, more scalable and more efficient. And we've taken both a technology approach to this space as well as an agency-based approach to do that.
Mm-hmm. So Deniz, you obviously work with Share Local Media for Knix. What brought you to them, and how have they been a positive partner when it comes to your direct mail efforts?
Sure. So at Knix, we're always trying to do everything and just the most with anything. I think all DTC brands are. So when we started, we knew direct mail was a channel that we wanted to invest more in. We had dabbled maybe once. And I think we saw Share Local Media with all their different offerings like shared mail, solo mail, Poplar, and we're like, okay, this is a partner that has tons of offerings, different options, something that we can start easily and small in, but also run other tests. So for us, we were really excited about that, and the fact that everything was relatively measurable was a really important piece for us. So we were really excited to meet with them, and then we did our test, and it performed really well, and it's kind of, I think now we've tested into every single platform that you've done. So we're really excited to see kind of what's happening next.
Yeah. What have been the key benefits of using direct mail for you? You know, you said that you knew that this was a channel that you wanted to explore. Why was that?
So I think what happens, especially with a lot of DTC brands, is you're a very digital-first platform. So unless you have tons of retail that people can kind of touch and feel your product, there's nothing really tangible, especially something like digital, not to say anything that's bad, but I think each platform and each channel has their own strengths. So when it comes to direct mail, there's a tactile experience. You can do so much with that tactile experience. So if you want to make it feel very premium, if you want a very extensive piece. So I think there's a lot that you can do that will be a different experience, especially being a digital first brand that gives people some reassurance and some credibility. Like, this is a real company. They're not going to take my money and run, and we're never going to see the product. So those pieces kind of help with that. So you're interrupting people's mailbox. We're not getting a lot of mail. You're making a lot more bills. So this is something people can have a real tangible piece and kind of learn a little bit about your brand.
Yeah, it adds a sense of legitimacy. Yeah. Teju, what would you add to that? What do you think are the key benefits of this channel for D2C businesses?
Yeah, I think if you've been around the block long enough and you've tested into a bunch of these channels, you can usually pull out what's unique about that channel, what could enable it to work for a brand. And if you test into direct mail, there are kind of three things that come to mind. One is that it's highly measurable down to an individual person. You know who you mailed, and ultimately for pretty much any client that we work with that's e-commerce related, they know who shopped on their site. They're capturing that person's billing or shipping address. So you have one-to-one attribution in the channel. It's also not a bid-based channel, which is fairly unique both for online channels and offline channels. The costs are really consistent over time, and the cost that you pay for a Black Friday campaign, those are going to be almost exactly the same as the cost that you pay in the first quarter. So consistent costs, and then last thing would probably say is same thing as Deniz said, is it's one of the only channels where you can reach someone in their home with a tactile experience, and that can enable it to be a really effective direct response channel, but it also enable a brand to tell a story in a differentiated way, and not in a way that's always a flattened asset as it can be in the online space.
So it sounds like it gets you really, really good customer data, understanding who's getting those mailers and how they're acting once they've received them. Deniz, what do you then do with that data as a brand?
So I think really for us, it's like to see how we're acquiring customers. It's great to be able to see which pieces of mail are performing. So we're always doing multiple tests every single time that we go live. But once we acquire, then our retention team really works on fostering those relationships, continuing that sales and that long-term value. So it's really great. So we're seeing more and more to determine like which channel performs in which ways and which creates more long lifetime cycle value. So it's really it's an exciting time to try different mailing pieces and see how that does.
Yeah. So if I were to receive a piece of mail from Knix in my mailbox, what might I see?
So really what's great about direct mail is you're able to, when you see so let me start a little bit back. When you look on digital, a lot of lo-fi creative does really well, and that's in a really great spot. But as a brand, especially a more premium brand, you want to make sure that that value is still coming to your customer. So it's that great imagery. It's about explaining a little bit of different things. So those reasons to believe are there. So things that you might not be able to do in other channels because people are scrolling quickly or you're just trying to get their attention, they have a bit more time with your piece. So you'll see the reasons why you should try period underwear, what sizes we have, some colors, some images. There's always something that we're trying and testing. And what's been great is all our tests have performed really well. So it makes it really easy to continue trying direct mail for us.
When you're testing new things, is there a specific audience you're trying to target? Are you sending out a specific number of mailers? How do you know that you've hit a critical mass, or you've gathered enough data that your findings are statistically significant?
Yeah, so I would say SLM really works with us to make sure that when we're testing, we're not really doing it so small that it doesn't make sense for us. So when it comes to how much we should mail at what points, we definitely make sure that we're statistically significant. So I'd say about like 100K in terms of pieces that go out before you can really measure against it. So there's that element. I would also say, in general, you want to have different tests to different try things. So sometimes you keep all elements the same, but you might change like the header. So like one copy point performs better than the other. So you try and make sure that you're not doing too much at once to test. And then when it comes to different audiences and segments, so we would say those are different tests. So you'd put the same control in all of them and you really narrow down to what you're testing. So if I'm testing the segment, then my creative is all the same. If I'm testing different creative, all my segments are the same, but my creative is different. So you have to make sure that there's some boundaries that you put in so that you can narrow what is actually performing well for yourself.
Have you ever had any surprising findings that have taught you more about Knix's audience from direct mail, or lessons that you've learned from using this channel?
I think what's been great is all our tests performed strongly. Like there was never a point where something tanked. So it was great to know that our hunches with certain things, especially like when you wait for attribution to come, you kind of have to make decisions before you have all your data in. I think that's narrowing as we work on something like Poplar where we're getting real-time results, but I think it's reassuring that none of our tests have performed poorly, that we can go, okay, let's do 10 tests in this market for this time, and we're reassured that they will likely do well, and we're not scared to test more and more. So we're trying to test in different channels. We take also what's performed in digital and also what's not performed in digital and put them into a direct mail version to see how they do.
Teju, have there been any success stories from other clients that have really stood out to you?
Yeah, great question. I think when we're looking across our client base, we have over 700 active clients in the e-commerce space. The lesson that we draw from probably the most successful ones are that they tend to have a similar test and learn mentality as what we have. They're empowering us to test on the major channel factors, creative, offer, messaging, format, and being able to empower us to do that allows us to optimize faster for them. So if you widen the time horizon to really anything of significance, it's usually going to result in a better outcome for a client than if we weren't testing as much for them. And it also guards against getting stale on the channel. So those are kind of probably the biggest learning that we'd say that's a general learning across clients.
Deniz, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges of offline channels?
So I work on all our offline channels, so TV, direct mail, out of home. I think what's great about direct mail is that stability in cost, because costs are rising. I'm sure as we felt inflation with consumer products, you're seeing the same thing in media. So the fact that becomes more difficult as the pandemic subsides, you see different competitors coming back into the space. So it's definitely really competitive, and as well as you see consumers' desires change over time. So there's always those challenges like cost changes in consumer behavior that you always kind of have to be connected to. And I think for us, we mitigate that by always having something tested in market. So there's not a million pieces of mail going to one particular thing, but we're kind of having a lot of different options, so we can see if something changes that we're able to take that and continue on.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the way that you're testing new strategies with who you hope to become new customers is different than how you're testing strategies with existing customers, or does it not really matter, when you're targeting those different demographics?
I think sometimes what we look to see is, like, often what will happen is our email team will do something and we look at it, we're like, oh, this would be amazing for direct mail. I think there's a few that are going out this month or later this month. So you look at the creative, we're like, okay, we think this works because it'll be like a new product. We don't necessarily support all product lines with all offline channels, but when we are trying something new, we do look at our other counterparts to see what we can do, what might perform in that space. But I do think, especially our roles, like, we're so focused on acquisition, but it's still great to see like the stories that are told in retention. So retention has that more time to talk through things, and I think there's a nice parallel between email and direct mail that we can kind of utilize those learnings across those channels specifically.
Yeah, so it sounds like collaboration is really important within the organization itself. So you talk to the email team. What does that look like, and how do you knowledge share across the board to make sure that, one, your messaging is really seamless for the brand, whether you're targeting them through these offline channels that you oversee versus email, social, things like that, and then also making sure that you're leveraging that data all across the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like I mentioned, like sometimes we look at a piece of creative, we're like, that looks like it would really perform. Like, and then we ask our digital team, we're like, how did it do on social? And they're like, well, it tanked. I'm like, okay, well, let's see if it's comparable. Maybe it just wasn't the right fit for that particular channel, but we're excited to try it in a different one, and it did pretty well. So what didn't do well in digital was not all lost. It was something that we could use again, because we thought, like, this will work for us. And then when it comes to email, like, email is constantly doing things. They have so many different tests in market. So we reach out as we're ready to brief a mailing. We gather those learnings, and we take that and we translate that for the creative team so that they're able to go, okay, what are those elements that we would take on and continue? So I think as an organization, we're always testing and learning, so we look at how it does. But we don't necessarily think that something that doesn't perform in one channel means that there's no chance it'll perform for us. So I think kind of picking and choosing, and also looking at our historical data of what we've done in direct mail, what's done well, what hasn't. We look at those response rates to really guide us, and also SLM gives us expertise. Like, okay, these are some best practices that you should continue to do. So it's a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Teju, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what that guidance looks like. What are the best practices that you usually tell your clients when it comes to direct mail?
Great question. I think it depends on where, what population type that we're targeting and what goals a client has at different parts of the funnel. There are a lot of different options in direct mail, from targeting to format to level of personalization, and we found that different combinations of those are generally more appropriate at different parts of the funnel. For prospecting at the highest part of the funnel, we've seen clients see success broadly with both shared mail, which are group mailers, and standalone direct mail. And for standalone direct mail specifically, wide range of formats are effective, so there's not a generalization that you can make about format. But look-like modeling tends to do the best for clients on the standalone direct mail side for prospecting. As you go down the funnel to retargeting direct mail, existing customer CRM direct mail, generally less complex formats tend to be more efficient. Intuitively, it would kind of make sense. those populations generally are somewhat familiar with you, and so you shouldn't have to spend as much to convert them. And both level of personalization and speed tend to be more important further down in the funnel. Speed around how quickly you're getting something in home around the time that an event may have occurred that you want to trigger a direct mail campaign around, or potentially what you might know about that person's preferences, especially if they're an existing customer, to personalize a direct mail piece. Those kinds of things matter more as you go deeper in the funnel.
Deniz, when you're looking at how a mail campaign has performed, how are you judging that performance? What key metrics are you most looking at?
So for us, it's the response rate. So out of all the people that you mailed, how many people actually responded and that response being purchased. So that's key. So you look at the response rate. That helps normalize any changes in your scale. And then the other thing that we look at is like AOV, the cost per acquisition. Mail is an incredibly efficient channel, which is fantastic. Like there's all the benefits of the tangible, the tactile, those experience, but the fact that it performs really efficiently is really great. You also look at it in like a 90-day attribution window. So we'll look at the first month to see how things are going, and then also 90. We've been dabbling more with Poplar, which is more of a programmatic, I would say programmatic type of format. So what's great is that's that real-time matchback result. So really excited for that and continuing to use that platform. We're also using it for retention. So it's really great because you can eventually set up triggers to say like, if customer does X, then they'll get this mail. If they do this, if they do that. So that's been performing really strongly for us. So we're continuing to dive deeper into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think would echo everything Deniz said. Generally, we'd recommend programmatic direct mail and trigger-based direct mail for integrating direct mail into a workflow the same way you would have kind of integrated email or SMS into a Klaviyo workflow or Braze workflow or iterable workflow.
Mm-hmm. When you're looking at the next 6 months to a year, what emerging trends are you seeing as far as offline channels and more specifically direct mail goes? I'd love to start with you, Teju.
Would probably say two things for the direct mail space. One is that sustainability options continue to get better in the space. Most of our clients, they're marketing to progressive populations, and so it's been a strategic goal for us over the past few years to present clients with a range of recycled paper options, up to 100% recycled paper, and we've been proud that those options are both really cost competitive and very close on quality to their non-recycled counterparts. And we are encouraging clients to choose those options and encourage other vendors to kind of widen the options they present clients with, because the more volume that paper mills can get behind those recycled paper options, the more incentivized they'll be to basically continue to produce those and bring the cost down further. So that's kind of one major trend that we're trying to encourage in the space. The other one is something we already kind of talked about, is it's now possible to integrate channels like direct mail into your customer journey mapping, the same way you would have kind of mapped out a journey for your lead retargeting or your existing customer touch points. You can now add offline marketing touch points to those online marketing touch points as well. And the combination of those two can be particularly powerful if thought out in the right way.
Deniz, what would you add to that?
I would say in terms of measuring and like how looking at your marketing mix as a total, like I think that is, especially as Apple announces different changes with digital, like looking at your holistic marketing mix is going to be a big thing for lots of brands to be focused on. So your MMMs, so it's really looking at your holistic brand, seeing how things work across the way. And I think what's also great is with something like mail, with offline channels, they're not only just great growth acquisition drivers, they also help build your brand. So I think those are some things that you'll start seeing more of, and traditional kind of advertising mediums kind of come back. It's kind of where I see things going.
Yeah, it seems like a great way to break through the noise of just a constant scroll online.
The doom scroll.
Yeah, something that we're all prone to. I'd love to, in the last minute that we have, hear if you have any advice for other brands that might be looking into more offline channels or direct mail specifically.
I think it's just to remember that offline channels are great at doing a little bit of a different thing. So direct mail is really great at storytelling, with a tactile experience. It's great for those elements. Other offline channels, and obviously I'm biased, but TV is great to talk about audio and visual. You have a really captive moment. There's different things you can do. It can be really efficient as well. It's a mass channel, so grows your brand, helps remind your customers that maybe haven't bought with you in a bit to kind of come back, and it's a great way to get in front of people. And then something like out of home is fantastic. You can be incredibly contextual, whether that's with the location, whether it's the type of the product. So there's lots of fun that you can have and ways to express your brands in different ways than you might see that only perform well in certain channels. So I think there's lots of opportunity in offline channels, and I think it'll be something we'll see more of for brands to come.
Teju, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I'd probably say the biggest thing is that it's had a reputation, the channel, of being having fairly high minimums to test into, and with the way that we've structured things and with the way the industry is moving, that's really not the case anymore. You can really get good proof of concepts out there for a few $1,000s, somewhere around kind of $7,000 to $15,000 for most direct mail types. It's possible to get a good data point on really any population at this point. So we'd kind of encourage marketers to think about it that way, in a risk-averse way.
Great. Awesome. Well, it looks like we're out of time, so thank you guys for both joining me today. This is a really great session. Can we get a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you.